Sergio Perez is in big trouble again and might lose his racing job starting in 2025. But the bigger problem is that Red Bull Racing Team might replace him right in the middle of this season. The competition for both team points and driver points has gotten so tough that the Red Bull team can't just rely on having only one good driver anymore. After some recent comments from team bosses Horner and Marco, plus Perez saying really harsh things about his own bad driving, we might see a driver change happen very soon. The big question is whether Ricciardo would be the right person to take his place. It's pretty obvious that Sergio Perez has been one of the biggest letdowns in the past few races, especially if you look at how many points he's earned in his last 6 races starting from the Miami race. During a stretch of 3 races in a row, Perez only got 11 points total. To show you how bad that is, Hülkenberg, driving for a much worse team called Haas, got more points in just his last 2 races than Perez got in his last 6 races. Even worse, a driver named Sargent has beaten Perez in qualifying 7 times. Out of 12 races this season, that's more than half the time. This just shows what a big problem Red Bull has in trying to win both championships. There's supposedly a rule in Perez's contract that says he can't be more than 6 spots behind his teammate Verstappen in the driver's standings, and he also can't be more than 100 points behind Verstappen before the summer break. Right now, Perez is not only in 6th place, but both Mercedes drivers are really close behind him in points, and things could change as quickly as the next race in Hungary. This is because Mercedes is bringing big car improvements while Red Bull is having trouble finding even tiny ways to make their car faster. Team boss Horner even admitted that they've reached the limit of what their car can do. All of this makes you wonder why Red Bull would give a new contract to a driver who's doing so badly and making things really hard for both his team and his teammate. When you have Verstappen fighting against 2 McLaren drivers, Ferrari drivers, or Mercedes drivers in future races, those other teams could use smart tactics. They could change tires at different times or have one driver slow down the competition so their other driver could catch up faster. This kind of teamwork is super important for winning the team championship too. If it wasn't for McLaren making bad strategy mistakes at Silverstone, Russell's car breaking down, and the tricky weather conditions, Verstappen himself said he probably would have finished 5th or 6th place because his car had no speed at all on the medium tires. Meanwhile, Perez's race at Silverstone was really messed up because his team made a bad decision to put on rain tires way too early in the race. It's fair to say this is probably the first mistake the team has made from the pit area when it comes to Perez's bad performance. When people asked why Perez got a new contract during such a bad time when everyone expected him to be switched with either Yuki or Ricciardo, team boss Christian Horner said it's a really tough question to answer. He explained that when you sign a driver, you can't tell everyone all the details of the agreement, so it made perfect sense to sign Checo at that time. But he also said this is a business where you have to deliver results. He mentioned that they've always seen Perez bounce back from tough times before, and they're hoping to see that happen very soon. There's no doubt that Perez has been pretty good at bouncing back in the past couple of years, but that was when Red Bull had the most dominant car and they were way ahead of all their competitors. If this bad streak continues, Perez could lose his spot not only to both Mercedes drivers but to Piastri as well, and he might end up in 9th place in the driver championship. Just for comparison, Gasly was in 6th place in the driver championship when the team decided to replace him with Albon in the middle of the season because he got lapped by Verstappen in Hungary. Keep in mind that Red Bull didn't have the most dominant car back then, so Perez is doing much worse while driving much better equipment than what should be expected from a real Red Bull driver at this point in his career. Even so, the situation is pretty clear. The money that Perez brings to the table thanks to his Telmex sponsorship deal and all the merchandise he sells in Latin America is something that Red Bull doesn't want to give up just yet. This time though, there's a lot at stake with both championships still far from over, especially the team championship where we have a real 4-team battle going on. If Ferrari can figure out what's wrong with their latest car improvements, then Red Bull should be much more careful about who they put in the second seat next to Verstappen. This is why people are talking again about Ricciardo replacing Perez in the middle of the season, as the Racing Bulls team owners have reportedly shared what they want when it comes to this team. They say it should be a team driven by young drivers, not by older experienced drivers. Ricciardo's experience and input about the car are really appreciated, but that's not what this team is supposed to be about, as confirmed by Marco. While many people have already counted Ricciardo out of the sport because of his own poor performance, compared to Yuki at the beginning of the season, the Australian driver could be in for a great promotion in his career. Red Bull won't want a second competitive driver next to Verstappen, who could challenge him for race wins and potentially even championships in the future, so Ricciardo would be the best choice. Right now, you'd find it really hard to think of any driver on the racing grid who could perform worse than Perez in the RB20 car. Ricciardo himself talked about the possibility of him driving for Red Bull, and when discussing it, the Australian didn't want to create more rumors but still kept things pretty tense. He said that nothing is certain in this sport and added that he would never make any predictions in this sport. Ricciardo explained that every year this sport continues, the crazier it gets. He said the sport is getting bigger and becoming more like Hollywood in terms of how famous it is, and also the storylines that come with the sport now. It's certainly more like Hollywood because it's so unpredictable. He said he doesn't have any proof that he'll be anywhere else, and crazy things do happen, but he's not in a position to say that or think that or even predict it, so he just tries to keep doing his thing. Now the situation couldn't be clearer. For Perez, you either earn points in the next 2 races in Hungary and Spa, or you'll find yourself being replaced during the summer break. This was hinted at even more by Helmut Marko when the veteran Austrian said that the media and the entire F1 world would know a bit more about the situation between Perez and Ricciardo during the summer break. The fact that Lawson has been scheduled to test the RB20 car during Silverstone's tire test, the same test that got Ricciardo his seat at AlphaTauri last year, is just too much of a coincidence to ignore. Horner himself said that this is just a regular scheduled test and nothing should be turned into a bunch of rumors. But what's worth noting is that the same story happened with Ricciardo when he drove similar lap times to Verstappen in the same car at Silverstone. It was obvious that he was going to be the replacement for the underperforming driver that De Vries was at that time. Lawson himself would be more than happy to prove that he's made for F1 racing in a team like Racing Bulls, especially now when they're under a huge threat of losing a spot in the team championship to Haas, who scored 20 points in the last 2 races and is now just 4 points behind the Italian team in the battle for 6th place. On the other hand, if the New Zealand driver doesn't get a seat in 2025, with Helmut Marko insisting that the team has something planned for him regarding this matter, the 22-year-old threatened to look for a seat somewhere else. This could definitely put a big dent in Red Bull's hopes of keeping the young junior driver, especially in times when even Verstappen's future with the team is not completely certain. With all this in mind, do you think that Red Bull should replace Perez with Ricciardo and give the Racing Bulls seat to Lawson? And more importantly, where do you think this would put them in both of the championship categories? Let us know what you're thinking down in the comments below, and once you've done that, have a look at the video that's on your screen right now.